In the first part of this episode, we discuss the original Aztec Mummy trilogy. Another Aztec mummy, or to be more accurate, a mummy and a mummy head, appeared in La Cabeza Viviente, The Living Head, 1961. Once again, scientists make the mistake of opening an Aztec tomb and removing some artifacts, including a warrior's head and a ring of death. Since the archaeologists are Mexicans, not foreigners, and are not really plundering the tombs, just doing scientific research, the murders are much less justified than those in the Aztec mummy movies, and the mummies themselves are the primary villains this time. Although referred to numerous times in the film as a mummy, the undead Aztec priest who does the bidding of the living head was portrayed by Guillermo Kramer in Aztec costume, but with no significant horror makeup. The heroine of La Cabeza Viviente, like her counterpart in the Aztec Mummy series, just happens to be the reincarnation of an Aztec princess. La Cabeza Viviente was directed by Chano Urrueta, who also made such notable Mexican fantasy films as El Monstruo Resucitado, La Bruja, El Espejo de la Bruja, and the famous El Barón del Terror, or as it's known in its dubbed version, The Brainiac. As with the Aztec Mummy trilogy, La Cabeza Viviente was purchased by K. Gordon Murray, dubbed into English, and released theatrically and to American television. The next appearance of the Aztec Mummy came in 1964 in Las Luchadoras contra la Momia. Professional wrestlers Loretta and Ruby, played by Lorena Velázquez and Elizabeth Campbell, confront a Fu Manchu-like villain who, surprise, is on the trail of an artifact which reveals the location of an Aztec treasure. The mummy, dubbed Tezamoc this time, and sporting a skinhead look as opposed to Popoca's shaggy tresses, shows up at the end of the film to wipe out the villains and ruin everyone's chances of finding the treasure. Oh, and there's yet another reincarnated Aztec princess. Unfortunately, the mummy is even more peripheral to the plot this time and appears only briefly. Once again, the Aztec Mummy character worked his magic, and the film received wide international distribution and achieved lasting fame via its dubbed version, The Wrestling Women vs. the Aztec Mummy. Las Luchadoras contra la Momia was written by Guillermo Calderón and Alfredo Salazar, scripters of the original Aztec Mummy films, and directed by René Cardona. 6 years later, Cardona and Salazar reunited for Santo en la Venganza de la Momia, 1970. Superhero wrestler El Santo joins an expedition to the tomb of a Mayan mummy. Nonok apparently revives and wipes out most of the explorers. Unfortunately, the film wastes a nice mummy makeup job on a fake monster plot, with greedy hunter Eric del Castillo exposed at the end as the non-supernatural man disguised as a mummy killer. 1973's Leyendas Macabras de la Colonia doesn't explicitly contain an Aztec mummy, although perhaps one might call her an Aztec mommy. In this Mexican-Guatemalan co-production, 3 masked wrestlers and 2 young women are magically transported back to the colonial era, mid-15th century Mexico. half-Aztec witch Luisa, played by former wrestling woman Lorena Velázquez, hates the conquistadores who have enslaved her people and uses her mummified mother to wreak revenge on them. The director of Leyendas Macabras was Arturo Martinez, who had appeared in the original Aztec Mummy trilogy as one of Dr. Krupp's henchmen. The Aztec Mummy's fame was not confined to Mexican cinema. A reasonable facsimile can be glimpsed in Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, 1966. Ancient Evil, Scream of the Mummy, a 1999 movie, featured an Aztec mummy, and the same year saw the Canadian-made comedy short Harry Knuckles and the Treasure of the Aztec Mummy. In the following decade came Mil Máscaras versus the Aztec Mummy, also known as Mil Máscaras Resurrection, an independent film shot in the state of Missouri. In this gringo tribute to classic Mexican films, professional wrestler and super secret agent Mil Máscaras and his allies, including other masked wrestlers and a super robot, defeat a scary Aztec mummy and his zombie henchmen. A sequel, Mil Máscaras: Aztec Revenge, is in the works. The legend of the Aztec Mummy lives on, in toys, on television programs, in cartoons, and in the hearts of film fans everywhere. Aztec mummies were in large part Mexicanized versions of Hollywood's Egyptian mummies. Both represent ancient civilizations and were revived in modern times to protect something, avenge someone, or to try and rekindle a romance with a reincarnated love. There were, however, two other classes of Mexican movie mummies, which will be discussed in the next episode.